Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warfare, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. As I always say here, like what you like, don't be a dick. Let's begin. NXT opens up with a triple threat match with Kushida, the Velveteen Dream, and Tommaso Ciampa, who jumps Dream mid-entrance to start the show off here. Dream's wearing a cast on his arm from all the frequent attacks in that area as of late. Does a very good job selling the cast, by the way, here. I love Kushida in this matchup. He is all over the place, going after both Dream and Ciampa. I think, especially on his big run near the end, is just some great stuff here. In the end, Dream knocks out Ciampa with his cast that allows Kushida to hit a bridging German onto Ciampa to win the matchup. I thought it was a very enjoyable opening matchup here. Things not fully resolved yet between any party, between Kushida and Dream, or Dream and Ciampa for that matter. So interesting to see where things are going to shake out from here. We get a promo with the Undisputed Era, and Adam Cole is basically Johnny Five here. He's basically he's a tablet being held up on like a tripod or something, or a stand. He's cutting his promo. I cannot take anything these guys say seriously, because you got one guy who's literally like Zoom calling his way into this promo, and everyone else has to play it straight-faced like this is the most natural thing in the world. But basically they're putting over, hey, we're going to win back the tag team championships tonight, and that's undisputed. After a Rhea Ripley hype package, Ember Moon in her first singles match back at NXT taking on JESSI KAMEA. I love this new version of Ember Moon. I think like the yell howl she did for her entrance when she was at the Wolf gimmick before her injury was like the silliest thing on the product at that time, in my opinion. And so here she keeps a little bit of that wolf mystique, but she's kind of elevated it a bit, kind of meshed it with like kind of the post-apocalyptic look she's got going on. I think it's a really good evolution here. Ember works on Kamea's leg in this matchup here, and then when Kamea has her comeback, she totally stops selling it. In the end, though, Ember makes JESSI submit, and then afterward, she gets jumped by Dakota Kai, who says she will not be a stepping stone. So it elevates Ember Moon some more. It puts over that's kind of her next programs with Dakota Kai, which is all well and good by me. Like I said, I'm really digging Ember Moon's return so far. We go backstage and find out that Bobby Fish has been taken out by a mystery assailant, so he's out of the tag title match coming up, and Kyle O'Reilly is in. Meanwhile, it's time for a rematch between Bronson Reed and Austin Theory. These guys had a nice little competitive match at Super Tuesday several weeks ago. This one, a little less so. Bronson still wins the top rope splash. As he's leaving, though, Theory's on the mic still selling, and he wants another match, saying, I will not leave here until I beat you. But this next match ends much quicker than the first one. Reed wins again with a Samoan drop, and then we find out after the break, Austin like very angrily leaves in a huff from the arena, and he says he quits, he's done. Which I'm wondering where this is going to go. Is he going to is this basically more of his like kind of like punishment on the air, where he's just written off for a while? Will he come back under a mask and try and regain some wins that way? Things are still very wide open with Theory right now after this losing streak, and so this has kind of been the breaking point. I expected him to keep asking for more matches, or get more punishment, kind of when Dolph Ziggler kept asking Goldberg to spear him over and over again. Backstage, Casey Catanzaro has volunteered to be Xia Li's opponent for the evening, and Xia repeats very often that she has to win this match with Casey coming up later on. We go to a six-man tag match as Legado del Fantasma take on Isaiah Swerve Scott, Jake Atlas, and Ashante the Adonis. This match was just wild. One spot in particular I want to talk about here, though, is when Jake gives, I think it was Joaquin Wilde, a Spanish fly over the ropes, off the apron, onto everybody else, and it looked like, Atlas damn near spiked himself the way he came down. That was a really scary moment there. Also, it's a cool cartwheel DDT on Escobar, so seems to be setting up like maybe he's the one next in line to challenge Santos to the Cruiserweight Championship. While that goes on, though, Wilde wins for his team, and he and Mendoza take out Adonis. So, crazy six-man match. Great stuff here overall. At home with the Garganos and their training wheel. Apparently Johnny's main thing, he has a real hard time letting go of control. He has no control over his circumstances with Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal next week at Halloween Havoc. So he and Candice have a little practice wheel. It's to scale, and they're just practicing spins to try and get ready for their outcomes. Johnny's real hung up on these morbid-themed gimmick matches like Buried Alive and Casket Match, and he leaves in a huff and everything. I thought the segment was okay. I don't think this was their best at home with the Garganos segment. I mean, it's no bar bar room with, laser eyes and explosion and a cliffhanger ending that I was hoping and praying for last week. But I think that, maybe somewhere in between like this kind of scene and getting over the severity and the seriousness of Spin the Wheel, I don't think this segment found that balance. Everrise take on the team of Drake Maverick and Killian Dane. Drake's harassed a lot in this matchup here to the point where he actually kind of he stands no more. Like he just gets a big fiery comeback against Everrise. He grabs a chair and just whomps both guys with it and gets the team DQ'd. Killian looks pissed at first, but then it turns out he actually likes what Drake did, finally standing up for himself, not taking any crap. And so then the cheesy music plays and Drake's all excited, but Killian's not quite ready to commit to the silliness just yet. We'll get that moment though. We will have Killian dancing to the music, and it's going to be the biggest pop you will ever done here in your life. And that will happen when they're the next Dusty Classic winners. Bank on it! Backstage, another UE member is taken out, this time Roderick Strong. And so Kyle O'Reilly is told he needs to find a replacement partner for the tag title match. Instead, he just nominates Lorcan and Birch to take his spot in the match. Lorcan and Birch are very gracious to say, no, you should pick one of us. You earned that spot fair and square. But Kyle says no, and he leaves to go to the hospital. So Lorcan and Birch are now the challengers to the tag titles. The match has changed yet again. Up next, Xia Li takes on Casey Catanzaro in what's supposed to be a friendly, face versus face matchup here. Xia gives it her all, but Casey ends up winning with a roll-up. Xia is pissed and beats up not only Casey, but also Caden Carter as well. In comes Raquel Gonzalez to take all three of those ladies out and just putting that storyline to bed for a moment. Raquel on the mic saying that she will be the Diabla to Rhea Ripley's Nightmare at Halloween Havoc. So kind of a good way to kind of tie, not tie them together per se, but in order to kind of house both these storylines into one segment. Still wondering what's going to happen with Xia and her absolute need to win a match and what this letter from Boa has to do with all that. Is there some kind of immigration thing getting tied into this? I don't know, but it feels very desperate times for Xia Li here. Backstage, Cameron Grimes is told that his match with Dexter Lumis at Halloween Havoc will be a haunted House of Terror match, whatever that is, and Grimes looks visibly shooketh as Dexter lurks in the background. Meanwhile, we then see an Io Shirai promo package where she's looking at the Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, and she says any match type she will be able to beat Candice LeRae next week at Halloween Havoc. That did a better job of hyping up the seriousness of the wheel, I feel, than the Gargano skit did. It's a live edition of Thatch as Thatch Can Wrestling. T Thatch is not mic'd in this, he's just projecting to the camera, so at times he feels kind of drowned out in the audio. But his victim this week is Anthony Green, recent Performance Center signee. After a couple of holds, taking advantage of Andrew, he calls him Andrew, by the way. So Anthony finally snaps after the second time, and he gets a hold or gets a shot on Thatcher. Thatcher kind of says, oh, tough man, let's have a match. And he cheap shots Anthony Andrew Green and basically has his way with him, tears him apart and makes him submit. Holds on to the hold after the bell rings for extra mustard on the hold, basically. It was a cool segment. Good to see Thatcher in his element here looking very intense, and cool to see Anthony Green on TV here. Apropos of nothing, though, you should watch my Vader in WWF review after watching this video. Main event time for the Tag Team Championships as BREEZANGO defend against Lorcan and Birch. Pretty good match here. It's played fairly straight, face versus face and whatnot. BREEZANGO goes to the top rope for the leg drop, but he's pushed off the top by a mystery masked man. In the end, Lorcan and Birch win the match and are the new NXT Tag Team Champions. The masked man gives them a hug, and it's Pat McAfee. He's back here for revenge after losing to Adam Cole at TakeOver 30. I called that shit. I called it. Run the tape, Kerwin. Here's a theory. Maybe Pat McAfee paid Ridge Holland to do that, to get some revenge from TakeOver 30. If this is their contingency plan after Ridge Holland got hurt, then I think it's a pretty good pivot here. I think it really gives Lorcan and Birch an edge, something they've been lacking for a while. I feel as faces. Them being tag champs, I think, is a bit overdue, so cool to see them get that nod here. And being allied with McAfee, I think will do them some good, considering how much they just pump up McAfee here on the programming and how they did so with his build with Adam Cole at TakeOver 30. I liked their matchup at TakeOver. I thought Pat did a little bit too much for someone who never had a match before professionally, but I am looking forward to a rematch with he and Adam Cole. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to weave their way to get to that next part of the story. This week's Dynamite focuses on building up two key matches for Full Gear, one of which being the finals for the World Title Eliminator Tournament. First round of action happens tonight. First match is Wardlow versus Jungle Boy. The match is mostly, Wardlow throwing Jungle Boy hither and yon, but Jack Perry's very resilient here, has some tricks up his sleeve, but ultimately Wardlow hits two consecutive F10s, one from the outside of the ring in, and then one just in the ring to win in emphatic fashion. And I think it'd be so cool if Wardlow made it to the finals here. Probably not going to happen, but a guy can dream. We get a recap of Eddie Kingston's comments from last week after the show went off the air, after he beat up Moxley and everything. He goes on to this whole kind of tragic rant about how when Moxley left to the land of sports entertainers, he left he and all of his friends and family behind, while he became an entertainer basically. So he took it very personally, and how, he would die for wrestling, but wrestling still screwed him over and everything. It was really emotional stuff. It's kind of too bad that, it didn't make the cut, didn't make air last week, but I'm glad they were able to feature it in kind of a recap this week. We think a rebuttal from Moxley here where he says he doesn't recognize who Eddie Kingston is anymore, and that Eddie may not have tapped to the hole a couple of weeks ago in their title match. That's because he was too busy, blowing out snot bubbles and losing consciousness. And Moxley says, he promises to make Kingston verbalize that he tapped out in that I Quit match at Full Gear. But we're not done, because later in the show, Kingston gets another time to talk here, this time for this week's episode, and he tells Moxley he did what he had to do because the ends justify the means. He's finally getting a world title shot after 18 years of trying to be a nice guy and not getting those opportunities. He tells Moxley he's going to have to go to a deep, dark place to beat him at Full Gear, and he already lives in that place. Ooh, good promo work all around from both sides of this title match. We go to our next first round match in the tournament as Kenny Omega takes on Sonny Kiss, who's in for Joey Janela, who was pulled off the show due to COVID-19 concerns. Kenny gets a very elaborate entrance here, really putting over he is not, the goody two-shoes he was before. He is definitely coming back to the days of the cleaner. He's got this extended intro from Justin Roberts featuring my favorite line, he's so fluent in Japanese, sometimes he translates for Michael Nakazawa. And there's these girls dancing with brooms. There's this dramatic backlit silhouette intro for Kenny here. There's the pyro, the works. And so then the match begins. The match ends. He beats Sonny pretty quickly with the knee and the one-winged angel. You think he's leaning more into the heel persona? Yeah. We have back-to-back interviews from Orange Cassidy and Cody about the upcoming TNT title match happening next week. Orange sounds very uninterested about things, and Cody sounds very gracious and polite and diplomatic. We also find out later on that the stipulation for next week's match will be a lumberjack match. They say on commentary it's to avoid the Dark Order from interfering, yet the Dark Order are featured as lumberjacks, which means they will definitely be interfering. The next tournament match sees brother versus brother as Penta El Zero M takes on Rey Fenix. These guys have wrestled before one-on-one, but never in AEW before, and this match was insane. I mean, Fenix flying like nothing else I've ever seen. The stuff he and Penta put themselves through in this match were just crazy here. In the end, Penta with the arm breaker, but takes too long to go in for the kill. Fenix counters his attack with a destroyer to win the match. So he'll take on Kenny Omega in the next round next week, but what a finish, what a match. Highly recommended. We get a recap package of the Best Friends and Kip Sabian and Miro over the big arcade cabinet destruction last week, which you can barely hear because one of the recurring problems of tonight's show on Dynamite is just all these audio issues where they'll play a video package and they'll not only have the audio of the video itself open, but also the audio in the arena. So you hear this reverberation, this echo, and it's really distracting. It happens for 9 out of 10 of the segments or the pre-taped you see on this show, and it's very distracting. Backstage, the Dark Order members Reynolds, Silver, and Colt Cabana are talking about their upcoming matches later in the night. They're hyping each other and themselves up. Then Colt goes out for his matchup next with Hangman Page in that World Title Eliminator Tournament match. Colt pulling out many of the stops here as Evil Uno looks on from the corner. Colt has some close calls on pinfalls and even avoids a couple of buckshot attempts, but does not avoid the last buckshot. So Hangman Page wins this one. The Dark Order carry Colt out. And by the way, you won't be seeing Colt Cabana in the rest of the tournament, but you will see him this Friday on my YouTube channel for the Just Another Romantic Wrestling Comedy watch party. Myself, Colt, and April Hunter. It's going to be a great time. Hopefully the Jacksonville Wi-Fi will hold up on Colt's end, but it's going to be great either way. Hope to see you there. We get a recap of Sammy Guevara outing himself as Matt Hardy's recent attacker, and now we find out that these two will be facing off at Full Gear in an elite deletion match. Please, for the love of God, no bumps off hydraulic lifts if you can help it. Then we see Team Taz on stage, and Taz is basically saying, he tells Will Hobbs to make his decision as to whether or not to join Taz's group, and he also gripes that, Ricky Starks and Brian Cage have been getting the shaft, and so Ricky gets the mic next, and he's very passionate, very upset about, he's tired of dealing with the crap, and he says that he's going to put Darby Allin in the grave, you half-face painted son of a bitch. And that's a very passionate promo by Ricky here. I think he and Taz did a great job. And then later on we see, I guess you could call this Darby's rebuttal, where he and Steve-O are hanging out, and Darby, does his homage to Jackass. He's in a body bag, and he rolls down a quarter pipe with no assistance and everything, and that's pretty much that. Then it's time for Le Dinner Debonaire with Chris Jericho and MJF. How can I describe this? It's a song and dance number. It is a composed, rehearsed song and dance number with MJF and Jericho. It's bookended by a joke about them kind of one-upping each other and trying to order increasingly rare steaks. Honestly, I can do no justice to this segment by describing it. This needs to be seen to be believed. I thought it was hilarious. I'm sure Jim Cornette will hate it, but honestly, who cares? As someone who grew up as a big musical theater nerd, I loved it! Britt Baker squashes Kylan King. By the way, ladies, sign up for AEW Heels. Then we go to our main event of the evening, 4 corners tag match for the #1 contendership against FTR at Full Gear. You have the Young Bucks, the Butcher and the Blade, the Dark Order, and Private Party. The Bunny, as of the night before on Dark, has reunited with the Butcher and the Blade. So there you go. I feel like nothing has changed yet as far as that went. I was still wondering, wait, what? How did the Bunny leave them and hang out with QT for a while? And the family got itself back in order like Eddie Kingston wanted it to. So there's more issues with the audio, with like the ring announcer mic and the theme music as the intros happen here. What's going on? As the match goes on, actually just as commercial break begins, Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy brawl their way to the back. I love John Silver's run in this match. He's all over the place for his big moment to shine. And this is a great match. Just all 4 of these teams are just doing some crazy stuff here. In the end, the Bucks corner Isaiah Cassidy. They've knocked everyone else out of the ring, basically. Cassidy, with a valiant effort, though, he rolls up Matt Jackson, but Matt counters it and rolls up, pins to win. So kind of avenges their upset loss to Private Party last year in the contendership tournament. We get the stare down with the Bucks and FTR. The Bucks reject FTR's beer offering. Then, presumably a crew member, the timekeeper or something, jumps the Bucks. All 3 of them beat down the Bucks. They Pillmanize Matt's leg with a chair. We find out it's Tully Blanchard in a mask. I thought it was interesting that they try to make the Bucks look sympathetic here when I feel like they've been trying to cast them as heels for the last several weeks. The whole super kicking random innocent officials and interviewers and stuff. And now they're in this position where, oh no, his leg could be broken. Oh, what could happen with the tag title match? Like, so wait, who are the heels here? Are they just kind of like pausing this inevitable heel turn with the Bucks, or are they just kind of stretching it out? Are they just stopping it entirely? Like, curious to see where they go from here, but I thought that, that it was a bit of a twist that I didn't really see coming in terms of like, oh, now we have to feel sorry for them? Time for me to decide which show won for the week, NXT or AEW Dynamite. There was a part of me that wanted to pick NXT this week because, as much as I love Le Dinner Debonaire, there were still a couple of problems with AEW this week I didn't like. The whole creative issues I mentioned earlier about the whole inconsistency with the Lumberjack stuff, and the stuff with the Young Bucks, and also those audio issues. But man, the MJF Jericho dinner has to be like my top contender, or if not one of the top contenders for segment of the year, not including like the cinematic stuff we've seen in pay-per-views like Stadium Stampede, which I also loved, but something like this on TV that's so different and unlike anything I've ever seen before on like a nationally broadcast wrestling show before. It was just so fun and refreshing. Yes, there were flaws with AEW, but I still think this just elevated it on top of the other fantastic matches we saw in the tournament. The Phoenix and Pentagon match, and then of course the main event was great. Like, I think AEW, I mean, the strength of the musical segment carried AEW over NXT from this week, and I am not afraid to say that. But let me know what you thought about NXT and AEW this week in the comments section below. Who else do you think on those rosters would make good musical numbers for future shows? I want to hear what you guys have to say about that. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.